Olá, estamos aqui com Roger Frank, presidente da Sociedade Internacional de Geotecnia e Mecânica dos Solos. Ele vai falar um pouco para a gente sobre o panorama internacional da engenharia, a situação brasileira também, um pouco contando a experiência dele como presidente da Internacional. So, good afternoon, Mr. Roger Frank. First of all, I would like to know about the innovations in engineering around the world. What are the companies doing or studying to make engineering better and easier and, I don't know, safer?
Okay, well, it's perhaps a bit difficult for me to mention some explicit names of private companies because then I will forget some others. Of course, and also I can only speak of companies I know of because they're operating in France or in Europe, or I've come across them in other continents. So of course I'm sure I will miss some important companies if I start giving you a list. Also, I can perhaps speak about what's happening as far as geotechnical engineering is concerned. Perhaps also slightly about the rest of civil engineering, but not that much. So I'm really focusing on geotechnical engineering. In geotechnical engineering, well, the problems of innovation is probably everywhere we need innovation in geotechnical engineering. As you probably know, geotechnical engineering, but this is true of civil engineering also, each piece, each construction is a prototype in a way. There's no repetition or no, very rarely, seldom we can repeat systematically the same job, especially when it comes to the interaction with the ground. So I can, innovation can exist in on all the sides. In fact, when the companies are facing a problem, then they innovate. And most of us, even if we are in the academia, or if we are in the academia, we accept that very often some technological innovations or innovations started with some technology on site in the field, and then the research was taken over in the academia in order, of course, to give some consistency or some rules or recommendations or some theoretical background to something which has already been done by a company somewhere. Now, so I would prefer speaking, in fact, when we come to innovation, in which fields do we need innovation nowadays in geotechnical engineering? Well, they are essentially, innovation is essentially for me important in urban works, the work in the geotechnical works and structures inside the city or below the city. Everything which is underground, the tunneling, everything which is just retaining walls, slurry walls, all these problems of excavation inside the cities. We can also mention, by the way, also tall towers with special foundations as well. All these problems of the urban environment, together with all the problems of environment. We need to, of course, to clean the things which we, over the decades in our various countries, we must clean the things which we have more or less destroyed. So it's how to clean the ground where pollution has happened by for different reasons, always linked always linked to human activities. Perhaps I need to, at this point, I think of adding a third thing, is the problem, we need innovation also for the production of energy. We know, of course, all of us, we know that we cannot go on with energy coming from coal, oil, fossil energy, but we need to invent wind farms. Don't know, I'm not a specialist of what's happening above the ground, but solar plants and things like that. And these need foundations and special foundations. For instance, for wind farms, we need to have foundations which can sustain an enormous amount of cycles of loading, unloading, etc. So this is where I see innovation. When we speak of innovation, we should not forget the past also, but perhaps there we need innovation as well. I am very interested by repairing old monuments, World Heritage needs a special care by geotechnical engineers. So this is also a very important field of modern geotechnical engineering. I'm realizing that I'm not directly answering your question on innovation, but I'm answering the question on what are the main concerns of geotechnical engineering, and perhaps the last area in which geotechnical engineering is important, perhaps the most important at this moment, it's the protection of the populations against all the natural hazards. I think the amount of floods and people killed by floods in 2015 has been overpassed. Of course, we think of earthquakes, which is a problem, but earthquakes, after all, is a bit limited in the space and in the disaster. But floods, the rise of the ocean, the problems of zero city levels, of cities at the zero level. I mean, all this is a tremendous challenge for geotechnical engineers.
Great. Well, now looking at Brazil specifically, how do you see the moment we are facing? So we have some economic and political problems and few investments in infrastructure.
I'm sorry,
Few investments in infrastructure. Yes. So how do you analyze this moment? How can you, with your experience, how can you say it?
Yeah, difficult for me to know or judge all the parameters which you Brazilians know better. Of course, I'm not going to interfere to Brazilian politics. Of course, I got my own opinion and I discuss with my friends in Brazil, but it's not a matter of discussion about the activities of the ISSMGE. The economic situation is, of course, more important for us to think about when it comes to Brazil and to the international society. What can I say? Of course, when the economic times are difficult, then all our governments try to reduce, or they have to reduce the expenditures, the investments in construction, in infrastructures, etc. It is a great pity, of course, and well, I'm not either a great specialist I'm not an economist, but I've got the impression, the feeling that investing in infrastructures could be a good way of starting the engine again. In France, sometimes our governments have this kind of policy, is what we call policy of grands travaux, of big works. When things are difficult, then the money, the government puts money precisely in public works. Of course, it doesn't help the balance of the budget, but it's some good investment, and then in the future you have your money back. I think it is also what was more or less done by some governments during the main crisis in 1929, by the way. So somewhere, of course, I don't want to judge the Brazilian government and the economic problems you have in Brazil. The only thing I can say is that I've noted in history that investing in public works can be a good way of starting the economic machine again. And it's a mistake not to invest in infrastructures, in buildings and things like that, which are typical of what is the action of a government.
Well, as president of the ISSMGE, how do you see the role of an association to promote engineering and to establish a standard of engineering quality, mainly?
Well, the way I see it is probably different from what is doing the ISSMGE. Why? It's because the ISSMGE is, well, it's a learned society, which is, its main role is to disseminate knowledge, to foster collaboration, and of course, help in education. So it's difficult for us, and it's not our role to issue, I would say, certifications of qualifications of what is quality, what is not quality. We work as I said, a learned society on a scientific and technological point of view. We have technical committees who can recommend what is good practice for designing, I don't know, foundation for designing retaining walls, to come back to problems in the cities. But to issue some certificates or some processes of how you would issue certificates of quality. It's not our role, and it's also because it's very difficult to do. It depends on the countries. There's so many things. The same way we don't interfere into commercial affairs or into job sites, in actual jobs, we don't interfere into the, I would say, the legal aspects of qualifications and other certifications in the country. I don't know if this was your question about that or not, but yes, it's my answer. We cannot directly, but of course we issue scientific knowledge. We create scientific knowledge. Not like this is a question, but I can use it now. We create scientific and technology, technical knowledge, and of course then the various bodies in the various countries can agree with that, can say, hey, look at the international level what is recognized in these fields, but that's the maximum we can do.
And how important is ABMS, in your point of view, for Brazilian engineering and geotechnical engineering? And in this Congress, how